Okay, welcome everybody. We have come to the time and place for the Harris Ranch Community Infrastructure District Number 1 meeting of January 30th, 2024. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Halliburton.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Strasser. All present.
Okay, first up, we have the election of chair and vice chair first on our agenda.
Madam Chairwoman, I nominate Meredith Stead as chair of the board. Second.
Great, we have a motion or nomination and a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Halliburton.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Strasser.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, and then, second for, I'm sorry, we need then motion for vice chair.
Madam Chair, I nominate Mike Strasser as the vice chair of the HRCID board.
Second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Halliburton.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Strasser.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, so next up we have the approval of the minutes from the December 19th, 2023 meeting. I'm the only retained board member from the previous board, so I was the only one present for that meeting. I have received and reviewed the minutes and they are accurate. So without objection, we will approve the minutes from that December 19th, 2023 meeting. And then next up on our agenda, we're moving to executive session.
Madam Chairwoman, I move that we go into executive session to discuss pending and or probable litigation pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061. Second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Halliburton.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Strasser.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, and we will return after our executive session, so everybody is welcome to stay put if they'd like to. Okay, thank you all for your patience as we return to our regular session. And we are going to first hear from staff on the HRCID 1-024.
All right. Well, Madam Chair, members of the board, good afternoon. My name is David Hasegawa, and I am the administrator for the district. If I forget to advance a slide, please feel free to remind me, as I tend to get carried away and forget to do that. The purpose of today's meeting is for the board of the district to consider whether to approve a resolution that would authorize the purchase of 2 projects. This meeting is not a public hearing. The board will not hear oral testimony, but will rely upon the materials created by the district staff and those submitted by stakeholders of the district. Based on emails and conversations with residents of the district, I would like to take a moment to clarify the roles of the district, the city of Boise, and the developer. The district is a separate legal entity from the city of Boise. After a petition from the original residents of the district was created in 2010. The developer is a third entity separate from the city and the district. The developer constructs community infrastructure projects and submits those improvements to the district for purchase. The district issues general obligation bonds that are paid via tax levy to fund the purchase of those projects. Today's resolution would authorize the purchase of 2 projects, but will not authorize the issuance of bonds. With regards to the noticing of this meeting, the CID Act does not provide guidance for how much in advance of its meeting date a project approval meeting such as the one we're holding today should be noticed. Today's meeting is considered a normal board meeting, and therefore 5 calendar days notice is sufficient per Idaho code. However, because of the interest and concern around the projects, the district staff provided a 10-day notice similar to a budget public hearing as outlined in the CID Act. However, that was not necessary. The agenda itself was noticed as a regular meeting is. In its 900+ page feedback to this meeting, the Harris Ranch Community Infrastructure District Taxpayers Association objected to being given what they deem insufficient time to review the 450-page staff report and the resolution. However, it is worth noting that the association has had the project purchase request for project GO 21-4 and the projects on which the two interest accrual purchase requests are based for a year, or in some cases, 2 years prior to today. The district employed 3 formal avenues of noticing this meeting. Web page notices were posted on 2 different public-facing websites. Physical notices were posted at the postal pavilions throughout the district, and a newspaper notice was issued in the Idaho Statesman. In addition to these 3 notices, district staff reached out directly to the Taxpayers Association on January 9th of 2024 to let them know about the meeting and the intent for the board to consider a project resolution for these specific projects. Before I talk about the project resolution, I did want to pause and see if there are any questions.
David, I have a quick question. Do we know from the association how they would have liked to have been noticed if it sounds like we've done what's legally required and beyond? Was there any direction in what they were hoping to see?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, that's a good question. With regards to notice, one of the emails that I received did seem to feel that notice was not information that the meeting was occurring, but rather a desire to see more of the content of what would be considered in the meeting. And it's to that end why I indicated the purchase requests themselves, the association has had either the purchase request itself, or in the case of the interest request, the underlying projects on which the interest is based for at least a year, and in some cases 2 years. However, the analysis that was done by staff, as you know, because you received that staff report probably within an hour, or they received the staff report within an hour of your having received it. So they did receive the request at the same time the board did.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. With regards to the project resolution, there is one resolution before the board today. As I stated earlier, it would approve 2 projects submitted by the developer for purchase by the district. The developer submitted requests for purchase of 3 projects, however, totaling $4.7 million. After review, district staff recommend 1 project, GO 21-4, be approved in its entirety, and the second project, GO 23-1, be approved in part, and that project GO 23-2 not be approved at this time. And those recommendations are what is inside the resolution itself. This represents $2.2 million worth of projects to be approved for purchase. The addition of legal fees brings that amount to a not to exceed amount of $2.5 million. Section 3 of this resolution approves 2 associated expenses. The first is the interest associated with the projects that is allowed to accrue to the developer per the development agreement. The second expense are the aforementioned, and that applies specifically to GO 21-4. The second expense are the aforementioned legal expenses that would be used, if required, to defend the resolution if it is challenged within district court. Section 3 of the resolution delegates authority to the district treasurer to calculate and determine the final appropriate amount of interest and legal fees to be funded with bond proceeds when a bond is issued to cover the projects that are approved in this resolution. Let's take a quick look at why the district staff are not recommending the full amount that the developer submitted for the interest accrual projects. Section 3.2 of the development agreement requires that projects on which interest accrues must first be purchased before the interest can be calculated. You can see in column F of the chart that is only, hopefully you can see, I know it's a little small, that is only true in column F for the 3 projects that are highlighted in green and those are lines 1, 2, and 3. And that's within request GO 23-1. And that is not true at all for GO 23-2. It's important to note, however, that this resolution does not invalidate the unapproved amounts that are not approved today within GO 23-1 and GO 23-2. The developer is free to resubmit these requests once the underlying projects have been purchased. Furthermore, starting with the last project resolution, HR CID-1-2023, so the one approved last year, and then this one, HR CID-1-2024, a separate approval of interest is not actually required. Instead, the project resolution authorizes the district treasurer to calculate and pay interest on the approved projects when appropriate. This is true for the underlying requests on lines 7 through 10. For the underlying requests on lines 4 through 6, the developer will need a board approval through resolution. It's worth noting that even for the amounts that do not get approved today, the district staff still find that the developer's request met all of the requirements of the CID Act, and aside from the calculation requirement, met all of the requirements of the development agreement. So let me pause there and see if there are any questions so far.
David, Councilmember Halliburton here. I've got a quick question for you. So
Yes.
as you're going through these projects and they're presented to you, can you walk us through how you determine a little bit on, or just the process, the length of time, the details that you go into to figure out whether or not it's appropriate or not?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Board Member Halliburton, I'd be happy to. And so that's a fantastic segue into the next section, where we will cover the requirements of the development agreement and then the requirements of the CID Act, which is found in Idaho Code Title 50, Chapter 31.
Perfect. Thank you, David.
So the first requirement is that any projects that are submitted by the developer must meet the requirements of the development agreement. That development agreement is a contract that has been signed by the City of Boise, the district itself, and the developer. And on the screen, you can see the requirements that need to be present, if applicable, in order to be considered a project that is valid and eligible for purchase. And so everything that is in the resolution, so GO 21-4 and the $312,000 from project GO 23-1, meet the requirements of the development agreement. As I stated, the unapproved portions of the interest, the only piece was not one of these headline requirements, but how to do the calculation itself was not able to be met per the development agreement. And so one of the things that does occur when we have requests that are based on, say, construction invoices, then we do have the district engineer go through and confirm that proper bidding rules have been followed and that all of the construction costs are valid and eligible, and that all of these requirements that are here on your screen have been met. So we have a district engineer who is on staff with the City of Boise, goes through and validates those. Our bond counsel also goes through and makes sure that any invoices that are being brought forward are eligible under federal laws for bond financing as well. And then staff go through and do their own analysis based on the invoice, a tie out of the invoices, and just knowledge of the development agreement. And then finally, we do have the district attorney, the attorney for the district, also does their own review and sign off. And more recently, we also have been doing, based on objections from the association, we have also had litigation counsel review the eligibility of certain projects based off of the CID Act. So that's at a high level the process that staff walk through in order to vet any project that has been submitted by the developer.
Hey, David, a quick follow-up question there. I know that we've got one project that isn't included in the resolution today. Do we have some projects that don't even make it to that point that don't qualify based off these standards and don't even make it up to us?
Yes, so Madam Chair, Board Member Halliburton, that is correct. There can be cases where either a portion of an amount may not be eligible, and in some cases, the developer has chosen to withdraw some of those amounts. Or there can be outstanding questions. Within the staff report, we note that we hired an appraiser, which I'll discuss a little later, to evaluate the value, the purchase price for land for project GO 21-4, but also for project GO 20 dash, I believe 7, which is a conservation easement. And so that project has not been brought forth because we're still working through some of the questions around the appraisal itself. So to answer your question directly, yes, there are projects or even portions of projects that do not appear before the board as either they have been found not to be eligible or there are additional vetting that needs to be conducted before they can be presented before the board.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that.
All right. Other questions before I continue? Okay. So the second requirement is that for any project to be eligible, the project itself and the associated invoices must meet the requirements of the Community Infrastructure District Act, or CID Act. There are 3 specific requirements that district staff review. The first is that there be a substantial nexus to the district. The second is that there be a direct or indirect benefit for any project. And finally, that the improvements or the projects themselves do not front individual single-family residential lots. And for the projects or portions of projects that are found in the resolution, district staff found that all of these criteria were met. The first criteria, and I won't read the definition, but the first district staff found that this first requirement, substantial nexus, was met for all of the projects within the resolution. Give you a chance to read the definition. It is also available within the staff report in greater detail. The second is that the second requirement district staff also found was met for the projects that are in the resolution, and that is that there was a direct or indirect benefit to the district. And then finally, I wanted just to touch on this last one. The last eligibility requirement under the CID Act that CID staff or district staff evaluate is that improvements fronting individual single-family residential lots are excluded. While the CID Act itself does not define the term fronting, the Taxpayers Association challenged projects that were brought forth in 2021 in Ada County District Court, and the court found that projects that serve multiple single-family residential lots are allowable, and that standard has been met for all for project GO 21-4. This is the last slide before I'll stand for questions, but with regards to the appraisal itself, the purchase price for project GO 21-4 is based on an appraisal that was conducted by an appraiser hired by the developer. In 2021, the district received objections to the purchase price for this particular project. However, those objections were not based on a professional analysis, and no professional analysis disputing the purchase price or providing an alternative purchase price has been provided. The district hired an independent appraiser to review the developer's appraisal, and that appraiser affirmed the soundness of the appraiser's approach. The detail of the appraisal review can be found in the staff report. The appraisal review did find some minor variations in how hypothetical scenarios are used in the appraisal, but none that are in violation of the standards that appraisers must use. The review also found that the methodology used for the developer's appraisal is credible and adequately supported. Therefore, the district recommend the board approve the purchase price as requested by the developer. And that, Madam Chair, members of the board, are my concluding remarks. I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Councilmember Strasser, I was wondering if you could share what impact these projects, if approved, would have on individual residents' tax rates.
So, Madam Chair, Board Member Strasser, that's a good question. Ultimately, it would depend on the year that the bond is issued. So bonds are issued based off of the taxable value of the district. So this particular project resolution would approve about $2.5 million worth of bonds when those bonds are actually issued. And so a lot will depend on the timing of when those bonds are issued, because the higher the value, the taxable value of the district, the smaller the portion of $2.5 million makes. And so if those are issued this year, well, there's no incremental revenue available for this particular year, but in the next year, if the taxable value of the district goes up substantially, then it's going to have a smaller impact than if the taxable value of the district goes up by a smaller amount. So unfortunately, I can't give you an exact answer other than to say it will depend on the taxable value of the district at the time when the bonds are actually issued.
Madam Chair, Chairwoman, if I can ask a follow-up question. As far as individual tax rate percentages go for individual residents, would approval of these projects make that go up, or would the percentage of the property value remain the same?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, Board Member Strasser, that's also a good question. The taxable or the tax levy itself is set by the board. And so that amount, there's a minimum amount that the board has committed to levying, and that is the value that, or the revenue amount that's necessary to meet outstanding debt. It is a policy decision of the board to determine how much above that, up to 0.3%, the board does opt to take. There are financial considerations to be made. For example, amounts that are not reimbursed end up accruing interest that is not used for community infrastructure projects. But ultimately, that will be a decision of the board to set that levy amount, and it will be a policy decision. District staff will be happy to take any guidance and direction that the board would like to see as part of those considerations. But did that answer your question?
Partially. I guess what I'm wondering is, for an individual taxpayer, if we approve these, are our taxes going to go up as a result next year?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Madam Chair, Board Member Strasser, the taxes would end up going up should the board opt for two things. One, the board would also have to opt to approve a levy that would be sufficient to issue new bonds. So if that's the case, then the amount that impacts an individual homeowner could go up. But if the taxable value of the district goes up significantly and the board chooses to levy something less than the full amount, there is also a chance that tax rates could be lower for homeowners than higher. So a lot depends on the market value of the district. And it's worth noting, as you've probably seen from being in the district, that there is a lot that is being built out at this time within the district. And so that is going to effectively help to increase the taxable value of the district, which means that it will help diminish the amount that any individual homeowner should actually have to pay. The reason I can't give you an exact answer is because it depends on the levy amount that the board actually chooses to set.
Thank you, David.
And David, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of where it's a little bit tough because that's not actually what we're looking at here. We're looking at the projects that you put forward and we're determining whether or not those actually are appropriate or they qualify for the CID. Is that correct?
And I'm sorry, I got distracted. I saw John McDevitt. Madam Chair, I'm Board Member Halliburton. I apologize. Would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, I think that that's the challenge is that we have a lot of folks that are reaching out with some of those questions, and that's not exactly what's before us right now. Right now, I think what we're looking at are these projects, the two of them really that you're saying qualify, and we're determining whether or not that these projects do qualify and if they're appropriate for approval.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, Board Member Halliburton, that is correct. The scope of today's decision is around that. So I guess perhaps to answer Board Member Strasser's question, it will not necessarily cause an increase in individual taxpayers through this approval. But Madam Chair, with your permission, I would like to, John McDevitt represents the district as bond counsel and is therefore part of staff. If it's all right, I would like to turn the floor over to him.
Yes,
with your
great.
permission.
Welcome, John.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And David, sorry for interrupting you, but I thought I might just comment on the question presented. The resolution before the board is to approve the ultimate acquisition of the projects that are included in that resolution. It's not an approval of the issuance of bonds or a levy related to these projects. So the short answer is no. By adopting this resolution, there will be no change to the levy passed on to the residents. That will occur at the time that bonds are issued, and as David discussed, based on the market value, its size of the bond, et cetera. But the action before the board today is simply just approving the ultimate acquisition of the project submitted.
Thank you. Do we have any questions remaining for staff? Thank you, David. I think that covers it then. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
are you looking for a motion?
Yes, yeah. So now we are looking for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve HRCID 1-2024.
Do we have a second? Great. Okay, so the
Second.
motion on the table is for HRCID 124, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Harris Ranch Community Infrastructure District Number 1. And we have a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Halliburton,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Strasser.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. And then with that, is there any discussion, I guess, before we?
Madam Chair, I might have made a couple of comments, I think, before we voted to approve. I just wanted to say thank you to the staff, for bringing this forward as well. So the staff presentation, but also the staff report as well. We had a tremendous amount of outreach from the community too. And I do appreciate everybody who reached out about this. I think that we really want to make sure that when we're looking at these things, that we're doing them correctly. Going through the staff report, hearing the staff presentation, I do believe that our staff has done the due diligence to make sure that these are appropriate. I've gone through them as well. I believe that they're appropriate, and that's why I made the motion.
Thank you.
Also, I'm not feeling very well, so that's why my voice sounds so weird as I'm talking to everybody.
Thank you for hanging in there
Yep.
with us. I know that you're unwell, so hopefully you'll get some rest maybe before our next meeting.
Yep.
With that, I will take a motion for adjournment.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Do we have a second? Great. Great. We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Halliburton,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Strasser.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.